Welcome back to the Hawk Zone. We have Noah Atnikoff coming on the show today. We're kind of in a slower time right now. So, second day of OTAs. We're gonna touch on that real quick. But kind of a slow time in the NFL. So we got something interesting for you guys tonight. We are gonna get into obviously a quite a rookie class of quarterbacks from this past NFL draft last month, and some really interesting guys in the draft. So we're gonna really kind of break it down for you guys as far as our thoughts and Noah's thoughts. He's gonna break down the QBs and just give an overall feel of kind of what he likes and what we like, just an overall general feel in the league with the quarterbacks. And then in the latter half of the show, we're going to give you guys kind of our top 15 QBs currently in the league, and where Geno might fall on that list as well. So Bryce, what's been happening, man? A little slower time, but second day of OTAs. So real quick, what's your thoughts so far on the OTAs?
I've honestly been, I've been following Greg Bell and a bunch of the beat reporter guys that are down there, and they finally got to go to practice today and watch practice. And the one thing for me that, I'm kind of one big thing that's a big change watching the videos and stuff. Seahawks are in game jerseys. Like the QBs are wearing the throwbacks, the offensive guys, and Mike McDonald's whole thing is about, having it where it feels like a game. We're going to practice like we're playing the game. And there's certain things like I listened to his press conference today, and there were certain things in it for me where I was like, oh, this kind of sounds a little Pete Carroll-ish, but then he does things and says things in such a way that you're like, yeah, he's trying to keep that compete level, but he's such a teacher. Like you listen to how he talks, and like one of the beat reporters asked her, like, how much of the defense is installed right now in OTAs? And Mike McDonald was blunt honest. He's like, maybe 20% it's like been installed, guys. Like that's about it, kind of a thing for us. So like, and that's where it should be. Like he's teaching a whole new philosophy to these guys. And so for me, I love seeing that. Like to me, that's exciting. Like he understands what the role is, what we're doing. We are installing. And someone asked them, they're like, it's only 20, like how much, by training camp and all this. He goes, you gotta understand, we have to get a flat baseline and then we just add concepts on our base. And guys have to understand that. And so like apparently the first O-line group today was Cross, Tomlinson, Olu at center, and then it was who is it? The guy we got from the Reds, Achem. I can't remember his name exactly.
Yeah.
And then it was Fant at right tackle because Abe Lucas is still not healthy yet. And so they asked him about Abe Lucas. He's gunning for training camp. But just a couple of things, Geno talked today and said how Ryan Grubb's system is built for the drop back passer, which is what he is. To me, I'm excited. Like there's a kind of a new vibe here. And it's not like it's so far departed from what Pete did, but it's just departed enough that it gets you excited that maybe this is going to be that over the hump moment that we've been kind of waiting for to get this team back to being a power in the NFL. Not that we aren't a power, but we're nowhere near what we used to be, where teams were fearing coming to Seattle and playing the Seahawks, or even having the Seahawks come into their, home stadium and beat the crap out of them. Like, but I will say this, man, Witherspoon looks good. Reek actually looks good.
Yeah.
But man, Byron Murphy, dude, that dude is going to be special.
Yeah. Yeah. You bring up Byron Murphy and just a new vibe. Like you said, coming into our house used to mean something. And I think they want to get some of that identity back. And like we had when we talked, I think Rob, when we had Rob on a couple of weeks back, hey, like this could be an identity as team. Like we gotta be bullies again on this defense and really show people what's up when you're coming in here. And so, like you just said, Byron Murphy as advertiser, maybe better. I know it's early and no pads and stuff, but hey, like this is gonna be, and we got some pieces there. So I'm excited too. Like you said, the vibe. And the other thing is, is like a lot of the vets were showing up. A lot of the vets, day one OTAs, right? Like just ready to go. DK, Tyler, Julian Love, like a lot of guys were there. It's like, and that's a sign like I want to be here. Like I want to be a part of this new culture that's starting here. Because things get dry with the old sometimes, Pete, like we're not knocking it, but things run its course and all of a sudden it's like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I like this guy. I'm buying into this system. I'm ready to go. Like I'll be at OTAs. Like and a lot of guys were there. Like you said, a lot of guys are looking good, like ready to go. Like, we talk about a building block, but guys in that locker room, they might buy into the point where, hey, we got a shot of like, look at the guys that are in this locker room. We got a
No,
shot to do something here.
yeah, 100%, man. And like, it was just funny, like listening to so they had Rayshawn Jenkins, who's a new safety that we brought in this year. And he was talking about, the defense. And he said, and to quote Greg Bell's article here off of the News Tribune, he goes, it's a lot of thinking, but we're professionals. That just comes with the game. It'll be challenging, I think, for opposing offenses to figure out what we are in. You go back and watch the Baltimore film, and you'll see how difficult it was for any offense or quarterback in the league to get anything on them because they didn't understand what they were looking at. The communication, it's every play, every movement on the offense, every shift, every motion. Something has to be communicated, but we're never just sitting back in one defense. It's really creative and a really fun defense, but you have to be on the details. So, I think people need to understand this defense isn't going to be instant and good. It's going to take time to build. But
Right.
once the guys understand what they're doing and they understand the details and everything, then they're going to be flying around and it's going to be problems.
Yeah.
And it's really good to hear him say, we are never just sitting back in one defense. I think that's something that is going to be a big change for us as Seahawk fans because we were known for the cover 3 defense with a Legion of Boom. We played base 4-3, a little bit of hybrid stuff, but we never were a multiple defense. We were never ever changing constantly. And so I think that's going to be really interesting. He also made, which this is interesting, Rayshawn Jenkins actually chose the Seahawks over the 49ers.
Wow.
So he had 2 offers, and they were both the same, but he chose Seattle because there was no state tax. That's why he chose to come to Seattle, apparently, was one of the reasons. But it's just really interesting, listening to Geno even talk about 15 of him and the other guys on the team, Sam Howell included, went to Cabo for a vacation this year, which is a good sign. But, there was one interesting comment made by a Seattle Sports 10 radio host, Mike Salk, who was out at the practices. And he said, this is the first time since, he can remember that you looked at the Seahawks offense and the quarterbacks operating, and Geno was the clear guy. You could tell. He's like, he looks like the starter. But the backup didn't look like he was a backup. Sam had an interception and a fumble in 2 plays. Like it was very close together. But he said outside of that, Sam Howell looked like he belonged and looked more like a starting quarterback than Drew Lock did.
Oh, for sure. And then you and I said that we're higher on Sam than Drew. So and if it's an open comp or if not, if it's Geno's job, you need if Sam is the backup, which obviously now he is currently, you need a viable backup. So that in today's NFL. So that's everything you just said is just exciting, and you're right. It's not like, let's be clear, don't expect just magic week 1 and all cylinders firing. It's going to take a little time to grasp this defense, but like you said, I think guys are excited, and reason why everybody's just ready to go. So it's going to be interesting as we progress, and then camp gets going, and just kind of how this is just really shaping up. But so far, man, like, just exciting. I think everybody is just excited, and why not? So guys, before we get Noah coming on the other side here, really quick housekeeping, guys. If you haven't already, and you like what you're watching and hearing, go ahead and subscribe to the channel below and hit the like button and notification button, and then it gets you get you knowing when future episodes are coming up. And and if you share the channel and the videos, man, that helps us a lot. And everybody that's been subscribing and tuning in, we really appreciate it. So, guys, on the other side, we're gonna have Noah and coming on, and we're gonna jump into a lot of fun QB talk.
Well, I'm the best corner in the game. What a run! Marshawn Lynch, get off me!
DK. Hey, it's John Schneider with Seattle Seahawks.
That's the result you're gonna
This offense, just in general. I mean, you had
To
a
me,
guy
just
like
watching
that.
his film, he seems more of a back.
Just the presence he's got in that pocket, the way he throws the football. Rust days, man. All the scrutiny that line was under.
This Monday night's big.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Joining us today is Noah Atnikoff. He's a quarterback coach with the Vancouver Island Raiders junior football program, and he's hanging out with us to talk Seahawks and also just this time of the year. Really kind of that one time of the year where it's just slows down a little bit in the NFL. Obviously, like we touched on just before Noah came on, OTAs. It's just the second day of OTAs. So there's some things to look about and get excited about and see how the coaching staff's going. But really, it's other than that, it's just slow time. Draft's been over for a while, so we're gonna just get Noah's take, and we're gonna break down a lot of the young rookie QBs that entered the league this year, and then we're gonna jump into some top 15 quarterbacks that Noah has, and we're gonna break that stuff down. But Noah, first off, man, thanks for coming back on the show and chopping it up, Hawks and then quarterback stuff, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, guys. I'm a huge fan of the show. I do watch it every week and always enjoy both your takes. It's good stuff.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Hey, so let's talk Hawks for a bit. Let's stay on the quarterback thing just to start. You have right now OTAs have kicked off, and you got obviously Geno Smith, who's been the starter for a couple seasons now, and then the Sam Howell move that happened a couple months back that they brought in here. John said right away he's a backup quarterback. But you look at this, and there's a new regime here. Geno's not Mike McDonald. Geno's not Mike's guy, and he doesn't really owe him anything. But do you think there's a possibility? Because Bryce and I have kind of toyed with the idea that it'd be maybe cool to see an open competition between the two guys. Maybe it's Geno's job to lose, obviously, but do you like that situation? What's your take on that? Geno Smith, Sam Howell. Give me your thoughts on both those guys and the idea of an open competition.
Yeah, for me, I think Geno would basically have to fall flat on his face in the preseason to not retain the job and go into week one as the starter. I don't think Geno gets nearly enough credit for how talented he is. I think the idea that Sam Howell is like even in the same stratosphere as talent of Geno Smith is kind of wild to me. First of all, Geno's much taller. He's bigger. He's stronger. Geno's got a much better arm, in my opinion. Sam Howell throws a nice deep ball, but he loses control of the ball at times. He doesn't always consistently throw spirals. Geno is honestly just as a thrower, he's one of the prettiest throwers in the NFL. And then secondly, I don't know, you guys did see this, I'm sure. He ran one of the fastest, I don't know if that was 40 times, but it was just, they were doing some kind of speed training at off-season activities. And I saw that Geno was literally the fastest guy on the team. So Sam Howell was not to be confused with a mobile QB. I think Geno throws it better. I think Geno is much faster. He's more athletic. I know Bryce has his gripes about Geno and his personality and kind of some of the stuff he gets into on social media, and that's totally fair. But just as a thrower of the football and athleticism, I think Geno Smith is far and away better than Sam Howell. And I actually think Geno Smith's a guy you can build around in Seattle. I think in terms of the problems the Seahawks have, he's like problem number 79 for the Seahawks. I think if you build a better defense around him, which we know that was the reason the Seahawks were losing games last year, and I think if you can improve that offensive line, which is much maligned for the Seahawks, I think Geno Smith can be a guy that can win you playoff games. And the fact that he took the Seahawks to the playoffs in his first season as the starter should tell you all you need to know. So that's my take on it.
So with that being said then, Noah, what are your thoughts on the purpose of Sam Howell? Was he solely brought in to be a backup, or are they looking to build off of, let Geno continue to play out maybe, the rest of his contract, and then you turn it over to Sam? Or there's the theory that I have, which we talked about on our last show with Lofa, where I see this very much like Trent Dilfer, Matt Hasselbeck kind of situation. You go for the young guy that's played a little bit, and then you have the established veteran that's there, and maybe you extend Geno and Sam for an extra 2 years. How do you see this playing out for Seattle in the long-term scheme of things?
Yeah, so first and foremost, like John Schneider, the GM of the Seahawks, is a former scout, as we all know. And I think he's a guy that values his pre-draft evaluations on guys, right? And I think John is a guy who probably had a high grade on Sam Howell going into his senior year. He was seen as the true quarterback one of that class and a potential top 10 draft pick. And I think number two, in that class when he came out with Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, and Matt Corral, I think probably Sam Howell was either his QB1 or QB2. And I think, honestly, if you can get him for a bargain price, which they did, it really ended up being a very late round draft pick kind of swap, really, that they did. So they really got him for free. In baseball terms, it was cash considerations, I guess you could call it. If they paid their Pepsi machine for the next 2 years. But I think Sam Howell is actually an upper echelon backup in the league. And the thing that we've talked about before, Bryce, is Sam is an alpha. And he is not just going to sit in the shadows and say, Geno, this is your job. Take it. I'm run with it. He's going to push Geno. And I think the thing with Geno is they want to see how he responds to some competition, which he didn't get from Drew Lock the last couple of years.
Yeah, man, that's a fair point. So we had talks obviously coming into the draft about, because like you said, there's been huge issues with that interior offensive line, and a big reason why, Geno, had some issues, throughout the couple of years that he's been a starter here. But also, you kind of look at his age and, he's getting older, right? I know he doesn't have a lot of miles on the body, but, so we also thought, there's a point where you look for that guy, that future guy. And is it going to be in this draft? Obviously, at 16, it was sort of a tough spot because, obviously we're going to get into the quarterbacks that have come in the league this year. But you look at the 6 guys that came in ahead of the 16th overall pick. And so you're like, okay, we're not going to get there unless, we really give up some stuff to jump up, and if they were are they a fan of Michael Penix? We've had guys on that said, they liked Penix, they didn't love him, so then it's like, well, it's the top 3 guys that went in the top 3. So you're not going to go there. And then we were thinking, well, do you go later? Do you go for a Spencer Rattler type of guy, right? They decide not to. They don't draft anybody. And then so you look at it like, okay, are they kicking the can? But how far are you going to kick the can? So when you look at it now, because we look at it now, next year, the quarterback class is not as strong. And you're kind of probably be in a similar draft pick situation, if not, maybe you have a better season, so you're drafting in the 20s maybe, or an 18, 19, who knows. So how do you look in the future with the Geno Smith situation? Do you see them maybe saying, hey, we are going to build around this guy and maybe give him a small even extension? And as far as kicking the can and drafting a guy, you might not see one until 2028, 29, or 30.
Yeah, so first of all, I think the Seahawks did a really good job in this draft, getting a true 3 technique in Byron Murphy with basically zero bust potential. I don't see any way that Murphy busts. I think he's like a surefire good player. Is he Aaron Donald? Maybe not, to be determined, but he's a solid player who will play at least 8 years for you guys and start for 8 years. So I think that was a solid pick. It was just a case of the best, maybe a guy that they didn't see falling that far is still on their board, and you just don't pass up opportunities to add surefire blue chip prospects like that. And being a Texas Longhorns fan myself, I can tell you I love Murphy. That was a great pick for you guys. And then as far as the quarterback situation in the future, I have done a little bit of work on the guys in next year's draft. I watched every throw that Quinn Ewers had last year, and I also watched a lot of Carson Beck. I haven't watched a ton of Shadur, but what I will say is all the comparisons to Lamar are absurd. He's not nearly as athletic as Lamar is, or quite frankly, even as Jaden Daniels is. He's actually more of like a pocket passer guy who, if you force him to, will extend the play, but he does not have like the 4.3 speed that Dion does, or Dion did. Maybe still does for all we know. But I really like Carson Beck from Georgia. Right now, he'd probably be my number 1 guy. He's 6'4". He's got a big arm. He plays in a pro-style offense. He's very accurate, and he's actually a lot more athletic than most people think. I'm a huge Texas Longhorns fan, so that kind of pains me to say that Quinn Ewers isn't the number one guy. But until he gets his accuracy issues figured out, he's got a lot of work to do. So as far as the draft next year, I know you mentioned Armac that you guys might take a step forward this year. I have a little bit of a bold take for you guys. I actually think you're going to take a step back. I looked at the Seahawks schedule, and I see a best case scenario of 8 wins for you guys. And I think, quite frankly, I think Arizona is much better. I think you're going to split with Arizona. I think San Fran will probably sweep you again. And I think if I had to say for the Rams, that was probably the worst version of the Rams you're going to see. They had a really good draft this year, and I think you're probably going to split with the Rams again. So you're looking at probably 2 and 4 in the division. And then outside the division, you got my Dolphins coming to town. That's a loss, in my opinion. I know we're both going to be at that game, Bryce. That'll be a fun one. But I just looked at the rest of the schedule, and honestly, I see you guys going 7-10. That's kind of how I look at the schedule. I'm not quite buying the Mike McDonald hype yet. I know he's been labeled as like the Sean McVay of the defensive side of the ball. But I think, Bryce, I think my dad probably could have coached that Baltimore Ravens defense last year and guided them to a lot of success. He was also at Michigan, who was loaded with talent. I just think it's a classic case of a guy who had a loaded roster and did a good job coaching him and maximizing the talent that they had. But I'm holding my reservations on that guy. I'm not all in on that. And I also think Ben Johnson was probably your real first choice, and he just didn't like the opportunity and chose to stay in Detroit. So I see 7 wins for the Seahawks. That's kind of my bold take for you guys. And I hate saying that because I do like the Hawks, and being in BC, I do want them to win. Last year, I thought you guys were probably going to get even better, and it was just sad to see a step back. I think this year's even bigger step back, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, no comment there from Bryce. Here's the thing. It's tough to put predictions. I think with Mike, we look at it like we expect a lot more from this defense. I mean, listen, you talk about how bad that run defense was the last couple seasons, and the defense just progressively got worse the last how many years, right? So it was just this downward trend. So I think it's tough to say. Yeah, like we talked about Ben Johnson being one of our obviously top guys because of the fact that, hey, we got to compete with McVay and Shanahan and these geniuses on the offensive side. But then when you took a step back and you said, wait a second, we got to get this defense back on track. Like this defense has been so bad. And when, there's nothing, I mean, you're a coach, there's nothing more deflating when guys are just running it down your throat and you can't do anything about it. So that it was just so bad that, and they revamped that whole front for the most part, and it just the same thing was happening. So I think that's why this, a lot of guys are kind of excited about the Mike McDonald thing because it's like, okay, let's match, offense for defense, and really try to be bullies again. Like you said, the Byron Murphy pick, there's a situation where it's like Mike and John said, no, let's get this to be the identity again. And let's be bullies here because we have to change, what's happening. So, and I always say I'm probably going to wait a little bit before I put a win total out there. But you bring up the division, and we're gonna jump into the QBs in a sec. But no, this division is going to be it's a tougher division. Like if you and I sat back, or 3 of us talked about this division and say, how's this division going to look in 2024? Well, you know what, the Rams will probably be not that good because they sold the farm for that Super Bowl, and Arizona's Arizona. But like you said, Arizona was tough last year. Gannon down there with a change in that culture. They drafted well. Like they are going to be tough. And then you're right. The Rams, actually, we got swept last year by the Rams. So it's like, and that was a situation where you thought that's 2 wins when you looked at last year's schedule. That's 2 wins. But it just shows you that, and I'm not going to put money on beating the Niners right now because we're still behind the Niners. You're right. So it's a tough division. But I still think this team, I think they're going to be tough. I think this defense will be better. So time will tell. Time will tell. But
I did not know that you guys got swept by the Rams last year, and that I'm telling you, man, that was the worst version of the Rams that you're going to see for a couple of years because the cabinet was bare after they basically unloaded everything for the Super Bowl. They've gotten better this year. They have not gotten worse, other than the Aaron Donald loss. But the Cardinals are going to be significantly improved, man. I like what they've done in the offseason, and I really thought they were going to easily be the worst team in the NFL last year, and to win, 4 or 5 games, I thought that was above expectations for them. And I don't know if you've looked at your schedule, guys, but like it is a tough schedule. Like there's not there's a few guaranteed wins. I know there's no such thing as a guaranteed win in the NFL, but it is a tough schedule, man. The schedule makers did you no favors this year. I think so. You take a look at it after the show, man. I see 7 wins. That's my personal opinion.
So it's funny because I'm looking at the Hawks schedule. I've looked at it about 15 times now.
Yeah.
My bold prediction, if I was to throw one out there, is I think the 49ers are a wild card team at best. I think their Super Bowl hangover is going to be huge. They're going to be missing a lot of guys in that defense with Greenlaw. Guys have left. I think there's going to be a trade eventually for either Ayuk or Debo is going to be out of there, so they're going to lose a weapon. I think they're going to have a massive hangover. I think the Rams will win the division because I do think the Rams are – but I think this year or next year will be the Rams' 2 peak years because the minute they lose Stafford, they're in trouble. Stafford's not getting any younger. He already has an injury problem, so I'm not banking on the Rams to be great. I think they'll be good. I think our division is just going to be a muck mess where we may finish in 2nd or 3rd in the division, which I'm fine with it this year. I look at our schedule, though, and I don't see it as daunting as you're making it out, Noah, just because the Broncos we have the Broncos week 1. I don't think Bo Nix or Jared Stidham's anything to write home about. Sean Payton proved last year he can't really call an offense. Like, their offense was nothing special. Then we've got the Patriots, which – who knows who we're going to see at quarterback, whether it's Brissett, Milton, or Drake May. And
is that game against Denver in Denver or in Seattle?
It's in Seattle.
Yeah, you'll probably win that. I'll give you a win there. I'll give you a win against New England for sure. Yeah.
We play your Dolphins, and the thing with the Dolphins team, and I'm going to be very interested to see how this goes, is when Baltimore played you guys last year, and I know the talent level is a little bit different, and there's different areas. Mike McDaniel's defense actually did conceptually well against handling Tyreek Hill. Now, Jalen Waddle was a little bit more of an issue in that game. So it'll be interesting. And it all depends, what goes on with Tua, if he's healthy or if he gets nicked up in the first couple of weeks. Who knows? We play Detroit on Monday night. So
what's the weather going to be in that game, Bryce?
September 22nd.
September weather, baby. Tua will carve you up.
That late in September, I could see it raining, which I don't think bodes well for Tua.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah.
So then we go to Detroit. We've had Detroit's number the last 2 years, or 3 actually, I think. 3 years we've had Detroit's number. Then we've got the Giants. Giants are nothing to write home about. We might be playing Drew Lock at quarterback for all we know.
Yeah, that's probably a win. Yep.
Then we played the 49ers, and that one's at home. If we're going to win one with the 49ers potentially, it'll be at home. It'll never be in Santa Clara until we build up our roster. Then we play the Falcons. I think everyone's overhyping the Falcons. They have this huge controversy now with Cousins being all pissy that Penix is there. Who knows? That's October 20th. If Cousins isn't doing it, maybe we see Michael Penix at quarterback.
I hope so.
I don't look at the Falcons' defense as anything vaunted, and they have a new coaching staff there, so we'll see what they do with Raheem Morris down there. He didn't have a great stint the last time he was a head coach. Then we've got the Bills at home. I don't know what the Bills, like Cole may listen to this show, but they decimated their receiving core. You're going to now ask Josh Allen to be a rhythm thrower in Joe Brady's offense, which we'll see. Like, they're raving about Chase Claypool right now, which you and me both know, Noah, is not exactly the biggest thing to write home about. Then we play the Rams. So that's, again, Rams at home in November. That's another one. If we're going to win, we're going to probably win at home. Then we have the Niners. We're going to lose that game. Then we have the Cardinals at home. Again, we said we'd split.
Yep.
Then we have the Jets. I don't know what the Jets are going to look like this year. Yes, Aaron Rodgers may be healthy, but I don't know if that all of a sudden makes the Jets this amazing football team. And then we've got the Cardinals again. Then we have the Packers. Now, the Packers coming into Seattle, I think the Packers are going to be really good this year. I think they're probably the best team in the NFC this year, in my opinion, because they almost beat the freaking 49ers last year. We have the Vikings, who are going to be starting a rookie quarterback or Sam Darnold. Nothing to write home about, in my opinion. Like, they're either going to be okay or they're going to be a little bit under okay. Then we have the Bears, and then we have the Rams again. So I look at that, and when I really break it down, I see a low of 7-10. I see a high of 10-7. And it goes a field goal here in a game or a couple of possessions. We hit someone on a bad day. Maybe we beat a team that we're not supposed to beat. But I think the Seahawks more likely are going to finish with what they did last year as 9-8 and maybe sneak into the wild card than they are to take a full step back and just be a complete mess from where, well, not a mess, but a complete misstep from where they were last year. I think what's going to happen for Seattle is Mike Macdonald's defense, he's actually understands what he's coaching. And that's been the problem for Seattle the last, I'd say, 3 years, Max, since we've switched over from that 4-3 of Pete Carroll to this Vic Fangio 3-4 hybrid that Pete never understood it, and he could never bring someone in to actually coach it properly. So he kept trying to incorporate his 4-3 into that defense, and it just made it a fucking mess. So I think Mike Macdonald is as good as advertised. Now it's going to be how well are his coordinators that he's brought in, and Ryan Grubb and Andre Durde are going to be as being able to communicate what he wants. I think Ryan Grubb's going to be very interesting with what he's coming with from college. And we know Mike's going to have his hands in the defense. So it'll be interesting to see. But I'd say, yes, 7-10 is the low floor for Seattle. I see them more 9-8 again and 10-7 this year. And it's just from the things I've been reading, the things I've been looking at and watching, and some of the moves the other teams have made, not necessarily in the division, but I really think San Francisco is going to have a massive problem getting over this latest Super Bowl loss.
Yeah, it's tough, man. Like when you lose 2 Super Bowls to the same team, that is a hard thing to recover from. Just feeling like, if I was a betting man, I'd probably say Kansas City's in there again. That was probably the worst version of the Chiefs that we're maybe ever going to see last year in terms of how bad that receiving core was and how out of sync they were offensively. You'd have to think the Chiefs will be even better this year with some additions at receiver. I actually liked the addition of Hollywood Brown to add some speed there. Hardman's there. He's fast as well. And then Xavier Worthy, the fastest player in the history of the NFL Combine. There is some big-time speed in that receiving core. I think the Chiefs are going to be much improved on offense. And if the defense stays the way it is, I think they'll be in the Super Bowl again. And I hate saying that as a Dolphins fan. But, if you're a 49ers fan, or if you're a 49ers player even, they'll never admit this. And I know those guys are very mentally tough, but it's hard, man. Like if you sit back and go, damn, we just can't beat these guys. Like if we get all the way to the Super Bowl and see them again, like it's like the Bills in the
Cowboys.
Yeah, in the 90s, right? When they just could not beat those Cowboys teams, right? So it's just tough, man. It's hard to get up and get motivated again when you keep losing to the same team in that big game.
Yeah. So, no, and I think so. I got a quick question, then we're gonna jump into your quarterback thing. So, if it's 7-10 is sort of your prediction, and I don't know if that's your ceiling, but you're sort of saying hovering around 7. Bryce is looking at more like a high of ceiling of 10. I kind of agree. Like I'm looking at the schedule and just what this team makeup is looking like. I got them that they could go anywhere 10, maybe 11. 11 would be my ceiling. But if they go 7-10, Geno Smith question marks will be everywhere. Like if they go 7-10, I want to get your take, and then we're gonna jump into your QBs. If they go 7-10, based on what you think, and because we don't think the schedule is daunting as you think, so if they go 7-10, I mean, how do you say we're gonna build around Geno Smith? You have to then address something quarterback wise, would you not?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it's going to depend who are the free agents next year. I think if they do, like if they get off to Bryce, you said the early schedule is pretty favorable. I think it gets a little harder towards the middle and the end of the year. But if you get off to a slow start, let's say you start 2-4, 3-5, something like that, then I think you start to talk about, do we want to take a look at Sam Howell?
Yeah.
If they get off to a good start and maybe the middle part of the season they're doing okay, they'll probably just ride it out and let Geno finish the year.
Right.
But those first 6-7 games are going to be big. Geno's got to get off to a good start because Sam Howell is definitely one of the top tier backups in the league. He showed a lot of good flashes last year with the Commanders. And if that's if he gets off to a slow start, man, watch out because Sam Howell is not going to just sit there and let him have the job. He's going to be pushing him every day in practice. And then the problem is, as you guys, I'm sure you guys know, like you've talked about it before on the show. If you do finish 7-10, 8-9, are you in striking distance for a Carson Beck? Like that's the hard part, right? The guys who are, the true franchise-changing quarterbacks, as we're going to get into in a few minutes here, there were quite a few in this draft, in my opinion. Those guys are going in the top 3, right? Like if you're not in that 1, 2, or 3 slot, it's going to be hard to get up there, right? Because when you're picking, let's say 10th overall this year, which is probably right around where I'd have them projected, you're going to have to sell the farm if you want to get to number 1 overall. So it's a tough spot for the Seahawks, man. I think I told you this before, Bryce, but I think in the long run, it might have even been more beneficial for you guys. Remember that one year that was supposed to be the tank year, the first year of Geno and Drew Lock, and everyone in the preseason was like, the Seahawks are going to be one of the 5 worst teams in the NFL. I think when you look back at it, man, it might have been counterproductive to have such a good year and make the playoffs that year. I think if you just would have tanked that year, you would have ended up with a CJ Stroud, with an Anthony Richardson, with any of those quarterbacks in that draft. So it's an interesting conversation, and we'll obviously talk more about it next year in the offseason.
Well, actually, Denver just had to really not win that one last game that they did, and we would have had Anthony Richardson. So that was more of Denver screwing that up for us. But hey, listen, let's kind of switch it over a little bit. Obviously, draft was last month, and the first 6. Okay, listen, the first 12 picks, there were 6 quarterbacks. All right, I got that right. So, which is crazy, right? And that's just 6. We're gonna get into some other guys. What's your thoughts? Let's start talking about the top guys, right? If that's how we're gonna do it here, and kind of break down what you like, and then who are your top guys that you think that, hey, for the next 5-10 years in this league are really, really going to be some dominant dudes. And what was your overall take of the quarterback draft this year?
Yeah. So first of all, it's an incredible class. It's a shame that the Seahawks, were picking, I think it was 16, because if they were even in striking distance, I think there were some really good quarterbacks that they could have got even later outside the top 3. But let's start it off here, guys. I just want to be very honest with you. Before the draft, I literally stayed up for 48 hours straight with no sleep, and I have 21 pages of notes here on the quarterback class, all in detail. I'll try to run through as quick as I can for you guys. I'll leave out the small details, but no surprise here. In Tier 1, this is called Superstar QB1, is Caleb Williams, and it starts with his arm. It is an elite arm. He'll walk into the NFL day 1 and have a top 5 arm. There's a play against San Jose State where he drops the snap, it goes over his head, he runs backward, picks up the ball off the ground. He doesn't even get the laces, probably doesn't even have a good grip on the ball, and just launches it 55 yards downfield, off balance with a defender in his face, and he hits him right in stride. He can't even finish his throwing motion. It's just like a little flick, and he gets it all the way down there. I'm not even sure Mahomes could do that. He's super accurate. He has beautiful touch and great trajectory on corner routes. He goes through his reads like a 10-year vet. He's not looking to improvise on every play like people say. People say he's just all he does is improvise and do off schedule. No, he's very disciplined with his progressions, and it's only if you make him leave the pocket that he'll do it. He is an absolute wizard in the pocket. I don't think I've ever seen pocket movement like this in terms of just natural instincts. He's got fantastic instincts, masterclass pocket presence. He knows when to step up, when to step up and through, and when to just straight bail outside. He never loses control of the ball. He's always a perfect spiral thrower. His dig route placement is impeccable. He throws to the field side, the wide side of the field with ease. He's got a really nice base. It's wide, but not too wide, like a guy I'm going to get into in a bit. He's got really nice soft touch on crossing routes when he's hitting the guy or the back on a check down. None of his receivers are getting drafted in the top 3 rounds, which is something that I don't think enough people are talking about. He did not have the supporting cast of really any of the other guys in this class. He throws the ball away when necessary. He's a good decision maker. He's got a very natural motion. He has great mechanics. He breaks ankle tackles and gets outside. He's got perfect trajectory on a 45-yard post route. Excellent quick game thrower. He throws screens really well. That's something Justin Fields, maybe the worst I've ever seen at in terms of screen throwing. Really good 50-50 ball thrower. He gives his receivers chances to make plays. That is a skill. Some QBs don't know how to put the right trajectory on the ball. He knows how to protect his receivers. He'll put the ball low over the middle to protect his receivers. Best feel in the pocket I've ever evaluated. He does stuff you just can't coach. Super instinctual player, unbelievable ball placement on corner routes, drops it right in the bucket over the shoulder against Cal with nice soft touch. Decision making is flawless, throws the ball away multiple times against Cal, rather than forcing the issue. 40-yard fade route dropped perfectly over the shoulder in stride. Great ball handling, really good play fake, sticks the ball in the belly of the back and rides the fake. Never flustered, always maintains his composure. I feel like I'm watching a more polished version of Mahomes at Texas Tech. He runs a read option against Washington. The edge rusher is in perfect position to make him hand it off. He pulls it, scores anyway. Impressive. Despite only being 6'1", he sees everything. If you're open, he will find you. He literally has Tom Brady level mechanics inside the pocket. He doesn't get nearly enough credit for how much of a machine he is throwing the ball in the pocket. Against Washington, down 42-35 late in the game, he looks off coverage to move the safety to the right, then delivers a perfect back shoulder throw on a slot fade route to the left. It was such an elite throw. I can't even really put into words how impressive it was. The discipline with his eyes to hold the safety and throw back shoulder with a perfect trajectory on the ball and the speed of the throw. It looked like Aaron Rodgers in his prime. He's the best thrower on the run I've ever evaluated, going right or going left. On schedule, in the pocket, fade balls deep down the sideline are out of this world good. Even against textbook man-to-man coverage with a 2-inch keyhole to put the ball, he still drops it in the perfect spot with nice touch. Excellent back shoulder thrower, plays big in the pocket, even with guys in his face. He still finds ways to get the ball there. Some of his throws while getting hit or being held on to look like Big Ben Roethlisberger in his prime. 30 touchdowns and only 5 picks this year. I don't really know where the reckless narrative kind of started. He's a good RPO thrower. 3rd and 10, he throws a 10-yard field side out route to the wide out while getting hit against UCLA. Amazing throw. Accuracy on 10 to 12-yard routes to the slot is damn near flawless. Anticipation, A+. Thick, strong lower half of his body. The fact that it took – and here's my last thing. I just want to say this. I think you'll like this. The fact that it took the Bears more than 1 week to decide whether or not they wanted to trade Justin Fields really should tell you how inept the Bears are. I would have traded Justin Fields after about 6 minutes of watching Caleb Williams tape. It's not even in the same stratosphere as Fields' college tape. This was the easiest decision ever, and I'm fully convinced the Bears legitimately pondered whether to stick with Justin Fields for 2 or 3 months. In terms of negatives, I've never had this few negatives on a guy, but there's 4 that I came up with. Ball security is 1. He has had over 30 fumbles in his career. That's something to keep an eye on. He only ever has one hand on the ball when he runs, which scares me a little bit. And he's never played in cold weather. He's been in USC and then Oklahoma before that. So the move to Chicago could be a tough one. In terms of my pro comparison, the high-end comp is Patrick Mahomes. Realistic, very realistic, prime Russell Wilson, and then low-end is Jordan Love. And that is my evaluation on Caleb Williams. The bottom line here, the best quarterback prospect I've ever evaluated. I came into it thinking there was no way I would like him more than I liked Stroud last year, but somehow I was even more blown away. And if he busts, let me be very clear about this. If Caleb Williams busts, they need to relocate the Bears out of Chicago. That city is cursed. So that is my first quarterback, and he is in a clear class of his own, number 1.
No, that was a really good breakdown, Noah, of Caleb Williams. I saw a lot of the same things with him. My only question and concern is not so much on the field, but the off the field kind of stuff with his dad and his involvement and stuff, if that derails him at all. Physically as a player, probably one of the most gifted quarterbacks that's come out since maybe Andrew Luck, I would say, as the last real true top echelon quarterback. Like, my grade in the last 20 years is still Andrew Luck is the peak of that has come out as a professional quarterback. And if he can do what Andrew Luck did with the Colts, with the Bears, and flip that organization and make them into a 10-win team every year because he's just on the team, that's phenomenal. If he busts, though, I think there's going to be more questions to be asked of that front office and maybe of Lincoln Riley's ability to coach quarterbacks. I think will come into question as well because Lincoln Riley's now had, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and even Cliff Kingsbury as well, because he's been involved in Baker, Patrick Mahomes, all these guys. So it'll be interesting for sure to see what happens with Caleb Williams.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, the nice thing about it too is he's got a few prime receivers that a lot of rookies don't have the luxury of having, and obviously they're number 9 pick overall too, Dunze. So it's it'll be exciting to watch that team and see what he does, man. So moving on, I guess we're gonna roll right into Jaden Daniels, man. What do you like about him, and also where he went?
Yeah, so tier two, I have two guys in this tier. I have Jaden Daniels as my second quarterback. This tier is called elite physical traits with elite production in terms of statistics. So in terms of positives, he is an elite bucket thrower. I lost track of how many slot fades they threw this year. It almost seemed at times like they don't have any plays beside the slot fade, but he is amazing at it. He drops it over the shoulder perfectly for touchdowns. I think over 10 times this year I counted. He's got a very quick release. In terms of throwing the ball, he's probably the guy that reminded me the most of CJ Stroud, just in the motion and the quickness in his motion. He is a terrific decision maker. He's tough. He takes a pounding in the Alabama game and just keeps getting back up. Fearless runner. There's times where I'm like, okay, it's time to slide, but he just keeps running for 15 more yards. That's something to keep an eye on in the NFL. He does have a pretty slender frame. If he's going to just be reckless as a runner, I don't think he's going to last very long. So he's got to learn to get down a baseball-type slide. The speed is almost on Lamar's level. I remember last year a lot of people were talking about Bryce Young and saying, oh, man, he's so athletic. He's like Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray. I'm like, no, this speed will not translate to the NFL. Bryce Young's like a 4.65 guy. The guys you see running around on Sundays is like Lamar and Kyler Murray. Those guys are 4.3, 4.29 type guys. Like, it was never going to work for Bryce as a scrambler. He's going to have to be a pocket passer. But Jaden Daniels is elite speed. It's probably somewhere in that 4.35 range. So it'll work in the NFL. That will translate. He throws a nice, soft, catchable ball. He knows how to change speeds. He always stays in throwing position. He's got a nice, good base. He has some runs that are out of this world good. He almost never gets caught from behind. He's impossible to fluster. No matter how many times you hit him, he just stays composed. 3rd and 10, he throws a 10-yard field side out route against you. Oh, sorry, that was the last guy there. One play that kind of concerned me, he ran a bootleg against Georgia State, and the Georgia State linebacker caught him from behind. That kind of scared me a little bit. Either that Georgia State linebacker is the fastest linebacker in the United States of America, or maybe Jaden Daniels got a little fatigued there in the game. I'm not sure. Another question I have is, why did it take him 5 years to pop off? He was kind of mediocre at Arizona State, and really last year even with LSU, he wasn't nearly as good as he was this year. So that's a big concern I have, is why did it take him 5 years to pop? Doesn't always recognize post-snap safety rotation. So, for example, in the Georgia State game, they show him cover 2 pre-snap. As soon as the ball snapped, they immediately rotate to a very basic vanilla cover 3. He's got the slot on the right running a seam route. The way I've been coached, that's where you want to go with the ball every single time. I know you agree with that, Bryce, and just completely misses the read. So that's something to keep an eye on, just post-snap safety rotation recognition. He had by far the best group of receivers out of the top 5 quarterbacks this year in terms of Brian Thomas, Neighbors. They both guys went in the first round. So, he's got some help with the Commanders. Terry McLaurin's a good receiver, but it's going to be a little tougher in the NFL. He is incredibly skinny. The body type does scare me, but he's been able to avoid injuries throughout his whole career, so it shouldn't be a problem, but just something to keep an eye on. And then really the only game that I didn't like was the Florida State game. I think it was the first game of the year. Just too many missed layups. He just gets thrown around like a rag doll in that game. And I just think he missed a lot of things he left on the board there in terms of throws, a little bit of arm strength concerns. His arm strength is not quite in the same stratosphere as guys like Caleb, Penix, and even Bo Nix, in my opinion, probably has a better arm than Daniels. He needs to learn how to slide. He's literally going to die in the NFL if he doesn't learn how to slide. I'm actually convinced he will get decapitated in the NFL if he doesn't learn how to slide. Those are most of my negatives. My pro comparison, high-end Lamar, realistic RG3 if he still had both ACLs and never got injured. And then the low end is like Tyrod Taylor to me. Just kind of a guy who's very mobile and throw a really pretty deep ball. Bottom line, I love his game. If he can stay healthy, he'll be a great NFL QB. I think it was incredibly close between him and then my QB3 in this draft. But I felt that Daniels' legs give him a slight edge, and it'll buy him time as he learns to read coverages in the NFL. And that's Jaden Daniels for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
No,
I look at Jaden Daniels and I kind of look at him in the same light. I didn't have him as QB2 for myself. I had another guy at QB2. I look at Daniels, same kind of questions I had, like, why did it take you so long to pop off, especially when you were playing? And it wasn't like the Joe Burrow situation where you were never on the field at Ohio State, then go to LSU and get to play and you pop off. Like, this was a guy that had been starting at Arizona State for, 4 years, and then decides to go to LSU in a transfer, and boom, all of a sudden he's the superstar. And I think it had more to do with maybe who his receivers were than it was actually him. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles it. Like, I look at Washington, and I think personally, in my opinion, I don't see Jaden Daniels getting to be a top 15 NFL quarterback, really. I look at the offensive coordinator and Cliff Kingsbury. We've all seen what he's done in the NFL and what he runs. Everyone's going to have the book on that, regardless if he's gone back to college at USC, where basically he was the OC at USC, but Lincoln Riley's still calling all the plays and designing the system. And he doesn't have a lot of weapons there. And so we all know Cliff Kingsbury doesn't really believe in a run game. So they're going to ask a lot of this kid right off the bat. I foresee something kind of like what Sam Howell did last year in Washington, where it was like, 21 touchdowns, 21 interceptions, and he's just kind of this even keel player that occasionally will make a spectacular play and it'll blow your socks off, and then he'll throw the most asinine interception right to a middle linebacker who's standing right in front of him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, it's funny, Bryce, you bring up the Commanders' organization, and that's a big thing. No, I mean, obviously, in the NFL, like, it's like where these guys go, it can just set you up, and do you believe in the Commanders' organization? Do you believe in Kingsbury? And those are question marks. Like we just talked about Caleb. Do you believe in the Bears? That's huge. Yeah, we talk about the receivers, but man, and obviously, I'm not comparing Justin Fields with Caleb as far as their project, but I mean, he got kicked to the curb there, and he was supposed to be the guy. So, like you said, get them out of the city of Chicago, or just dismantle the franchise. It's just one of those things. Let's move on to the next guy, Drake May. And here's an organization. Obviously, we're going to get your take on Drake, but it's going to be interesting because no more Bill, a completely different, Patriots team. Mac Jones, obviously spit out, finished, no good. So taking that in, give me your breakdown of May, and also how do you project he's going to be with the Pats, say, in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so real quick, I don't have Drake May as my third best quarterback in this class. I think the Patriots made a huge mistake there, taking him at number 3.
Okay, it'll go. So if you want to go to your third, I was just going in order with the draft, but we can
sure.
go. If you want to go to your third, then we'll go to your third.
Yeah, so I have Michael Penix as my third best quarterback in this class. And the positives, it starts with all-time great deep ball accuracy. He is a thrower and a passer. He knows how to change velocity, can throw with touch, but can also turn on the gas. Bullseye accuracy at literally every level of the field. He has elite arm strength. He'll walk in the NFL day one, have a top 5 arm. Deep out routes to the field side, the wide side of the field, on a rope, in stride, insane velocity. When he really steps on it and turns on the gas, it literally looks like Brett Favre in his prime. There's a cover 2 hole shot deep down the middle in the Texas game that literally blew my mind. Most QBs wouldn't have even attempted it or pulled the trigger. Split safeties for Texas. So cover 2, they're going to go wide, and he just absolutely zings this thing in down the middle in between them. And the 2 safeties for Texas are just looking at each other like did that just happen? They couldn't even believe that he even attempted it, let alone got it in there. He sees the field very well. He can throw off his back foot without sacrificing accuracy. He doesn't need a clean pocket to throw. Doesn't need a ton of space to throw, which is a big thing for me. You talk about guys like Tua, he needs a lot of space to be able to throw the ball efficiently. Arm angles, A+. There is something with that too. Like, there's a negative to that. Like, there's games where I'm watching and like literally every throw is sidearm from Michael Penix. It's amazing he's able to get away with it, but it just shows you how good his arm is. Touch on deep balls is Marino-esque is what I wrote down. Good feel in the pocket. Not as skinny as people are saying. I think Jaden Daniels is way skinnier. He's got a thick and strong upper body. I think he could afford to put on some weight in the lower body and start hitting that leg press. He ran a 4.55 40 at his pro day, which was really impressive for a guy that people said couldn't really move that much or extend the play. He has enormous hands, 10.5 inches is what they measured it at, which probably explains why he's such a good short ball thrower. His screen ball placement is perfect every time. Great in the quick game. The Michigan game is being overblown, in my opinion. They were completely overmatched on the offensive line, and a questionable holding call in the fourth quarter really, really killed them. When I thought they were about to get back in the game, their outstanding leadership skills, standing in the Michigan game while getting pounded and not tapping out despite being in pretty obvious pain, in my opinion. Killer instinct in the Oregon game. It's late in the game. It's like 1st and 10. You could easily check it down, but he just calls game, throws the touchdown, ends the game against Oregon. Not afraid to go for the jugular. I love that. He almost never gets sacked. He's got a really good internal clock. He's the best at throwing the ball away maybe I've ever seen. That split-second decision where pressure's coming and no one's open, he always throws it away to a safe spot and avoiding the intentional grounding penalty. That is a skill in itself. In terms of the negatives, he is a little pushy for my liking in terms of the motion. Not very rotational as a thrower, but because his hands are so gigantic, he gets away with it. And as gifted of a thrower as he is, there's still room for improvement. I feel like he could use his legs a little bit more and extend the play. Doesn't give you a ton off script. He is ultra aggressive in his decision making. I feel like he could take a few more checkdowns in the NFL. And he had a fantastic NFL caliber play caller in college in Ryan Grubb. What if he gets paired with a bad play caller in the NFL? Well, he's got Zach Robinson as his offensive coordinator in Atlanta, and I don't know anything about that guy. I know he played quarterback at Oklahoma State. I watched him a lot. I don't think he's ever called plays before in the NFL, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. The injuries do scare me a little bit. Throws off his back foot almost every play, which scares me a little bit. There's games where he's literally throwing – every throw is a sidearm fadeaway, so that scares me. He seems a little flinchy at times against pressure and does do a little chuck and duck. See the Oregon game. You could say Odunze bails him out at times, but for every one of those, there's 4 more perfectly placed back shoulder throws where he makes Odunze look good. Outstanding at throwing back shoulder fades. Pro comparison, high-end, C.J. Stroud, realistic, Geno Smith, low-end Sam Bradford, the guy who was a beautiful thrower of the football but just could not stay healthy. Bottom line, I absolutely love him, and I think his game translates to the NFL. And I think the Falcons are getting a ton of heat for that pick. And quite frankly, I loved it. Kirk Cousins is 36 years old, 37 years old, coming off an Achilles. I think he's got 1 or 2 years left. Let the kid sit and marinate. I get it. He's not your prototypical 21-year-old that you'd like to sit for 2 years. He is 23. But I think sitting for a couple of years, letting those injuries heal up. He was banged up in the Michigan game. Let him sit there. Let him learn behind Cousins. We know Cousins is a good person. He's going to be a good teacher. And when he's ready to go, man, you will hit the ground running if you're Atlanta. I like their skill position players, Bijan, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. I think it's all there for a man, and I think the sooner they get him in, the better. I honestly believe that if they had a true training camp battle between him and Kirk Cousins right now, he would beat Cousins out. That's my honest opinion. But when you're paying a guy, $50 million per year for the next 4 years, you have no choice but to play him for this year. We'll reevaluate next offseason.
Yeah, no, that was my QB2 in this draft process. Outside Caleb Williams was Michael Penix. I was a huge Huskies fan, so I got to watch him for the last 2 years, dice up the Pac-12 defenses and make Oregon fans, hate the Huskies even more, which is great to see. I think there's a good chance he plays this year. As much as we want him to sit, I think if they get into a situation where Cousins isn't the answer and he's struggling, I think they won't hesitate to turn to Penix, because I look at that team. You got Pitts, you got Drake London, you've got Bijan Robinson. Like, you've got all these weapons now. There is no reason why you should not be able to move the football and score. And we all know Arthur Smith couldn't figure that out for whatever reason when he had those guys. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Penix will probably end up being more like what you said, is a CJ Stroud type. One comparison I had was he's Geno Smith without all the bonehead decisions coming out of West Virginia. I think he does have some areas to clean up, but I think for him, it's going to really depend on how they run that offense and how they build that offensive line in Atlanta. If they don't have a solid offensive line, Michael Penix is not designed to move around and do a lot of off-schedule throw like Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels. So, no, I think he'll have a good career in the NFL. I wish, he'd ended up in Seattle. I think it would have been fun. But, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Michael Penix down there in Atlanta.
I know. Let's move on to your number 4.
Yeah, number 4 for me is Bo Nix. He's got a way better arm than people are giving him credit for. He's a great deep ball thrower, beautiful touch on deep post routes, terrific zip on outbreakers, great improvisation skills. When he scrambles to throw. He's not scrambling to run. He is probably, in my opinion, the second best improviser other than Caleb. Daniels, everyone loves the mobility, but when he goes up, as soon as he leaves the pocket, he's running. There's really nothing in terms of extending the play and keeping his eyes downfield. He has great mechanics, got a wide base. He never gets sacked. He's got a great internal clock. I really like Bo Nix, and I think people are sleeping on him. He's got great trajectory on his deep throws. He can change speed, throw the ball touch very well. He's got pretty good wheels. I like the fact that he's a natural born leader. He is a coach's son, so I like that aspect of it too. He's a little more mature, 24 years old rookie, so that'll help him actually, in my opinion. He'll hit the ground running. And he had 4 different offensive coordinators throughout his college career, and I think having continuity with Sean Payton will be really good for him. Negatives, the Auburn tape, so obviously we know some of it was pretty ugly. He is 23 years old playing against 19-year-olds. And really any kind of pressure, he immediately looks for the check down instead of keeping his eyes downfield. You don't see many deep throws when he's facing pressure. The game against Georgia, 2022 season opener, was pretty ugly, and his deep ball does hang at times. Pro comp, high end, Drew Brees, realistic, Derek Carr, low end, Kenny Pickett, guy that was in college for what seemed like forever and just never really hit the ground running in the NFL.
I think those are really good comps for Bo Nix, actually. I think I know he had a top 30 visit in Seattle, and I'd watch Bo Nix quite a bit because my wife's a big Oregon fan, and so I had to watch Oregon games, even though it was kind of hard. I like Nix. I like his processing. He is good at actually off-schedule stuff, which I think he doesn't get credit for enough. And people look at what he did at Oregon and they go, well, he wasn't pushing the ball. Well, then just go watch his Auburn film. But the thing that happened at Oregon was his decision-making got better. So you take the strength that he had at Auburn, which was pushing the ball. Yes, Oregon asked him to do a lot of horizontal RPO, quick slant type throws, but he was extremely accurate while doing that. So yeah, I actually had Bo Nix as my 3rd guy in my rankings. I had Jaden Daniels at 4 out of the group, just because when I look at NFL quarterbacks and guys coming from college, the athleticism isn't as much of a factor for me. It's more about, can you be on time? Can you read a defense? Can you make those throws? Like you said earlier, the dig route, those type of things. Bo Nix can make those throws. I don't know if Sean Payton's the right coach for Bo Nix. I think Sean Payton in his mind thinks he's the right coach for Bo Nix. So I hope Bo Nix doesn't get screwed over by the fact that he has an inept play caller that doesn't have new designs and stuff like that. So it should be interesting to see what kind of happens there.
He doesn't throw the ball downfield a ton, but I will say when he does, it looks pretty good. He's just got to be a little more aggressive. That's why I had the Derek Carr comp. In terms of Derek Carr is a great deep ball thrower. He just doesn't do it enough, and that frustrates me.
Yeah, no, let's all right, let's move on to who you got number 5.
I got J.J. McCarthy at number 5. Positives, he played in a true pro-style offense at Michigan, making NFL reads. He has a level of discipline and structure that is required to play the game. He knows how to read coverage and get the ball out on time. He throws one of the best dig routes of any QB in this class. Much bigger arm than most people are giving him credit for. Now, here's one thing. He is a thrower, not a passer. He has one speed, and that is the 98-mile-an-hour fastball. There's almost zero examples of him throwing with touch, sideline, drop it in the bucket, throw. Everything is 100 miles an hour for this guy, and that's why he reminds me a lot of Jay Cutler when he was coming out. He can go 1 to 2 to check down really well and play in structure. It's not easy being a game manager. A lot of people say, all he did was hand the ball off, but when is he asked to throw? Bryce, 3rd and long, right? It's the only time he's asked to throw, and for the most part, he bailed them out on 3rd and long. Being a game manager is not easy, man. When you throw 40 times a game, you have an opportunity to miss 12 of them and get the other ones back. When you only get 21 throws a game, you better be on point or else everyone's going to be crushing you. He has tremendous mechanics. He's got a really wide base, great short ball thrower. He's fantastic off of play action. And he gets a ton of zip on his short to intermediate throws. It's a very live arm. The negatives, there's almost zero touch. He's not even an attempt to throw a touch pass. I watched 55 minutes of his film this year, and there was not one throw where he layered the ball in over a defender. Almost nothing in terms of fade balls down the sidelines. And the Alabama game, when he finally ran into a defense that had the same level of skill up front as he did with Michigan, he struggled and he looked a little overwhelmed, and it seemed like the pressure did phase him a little bit. Pro comparison, my high end is Jay Cutler, a guy who had an absolute cannon for an arm, but really could only throw fastballs. There's really no attempt at throwing with touch. Realistic, Baker Mayfield, big time arm, everything's 100 miles an hour. But played on a college roster that was loaded with talent and wasn't asked to carry the team, same as Baker at Oklahoma, right? And then my low end is Andy Dalton. Bottom line, you'll like this. I actually wrote this down a week before the draft. Situation fit will determine his success. Could succeed in Minnesota with O'Connell as his play caller. So I thought that was pretty funny how it did come to fruition.
Yeah, JJ McCarthy was interesting when I evaluated him. He looked to me like you said, Jay Cutler. Jim Harbaugh didn't ask. He reminds me actually a lot of Alex Smith. Yeah. That's who I look at with JJ McCarthy. He's Alex Smith. Wasn't asked to do a lot. And I mean Alex Smith in San Francisco. Wasn't asked to do a lot. Run the ball, make the odd throw here and there to try and get us out of trouble if we get stopped on our first or second down run play and we're in, third and +7 kind of territory. I think he might have the highest bust potential out of the ones we've talked about so far. He does have some weapons to throw to. Justin Jefferson, obviously, Addison. And I believe Hawkinson's still there at tight end. But the one thing for me is he's going to require a lot of development. And to go from what he did with Jim Harbaugh to now what Kevin O'Connell does in that Rams style of kind of offense, will be very interesting to see what happens with JJ, because it requires you to actually be smart as a quarterback and understand what you're looking at. So it'll be interesting to see if JJ comes out as a starter this year. I think Sam Darnold may start for the Vikings this year, and they may actually redshirt JJ and go, maybe at the end of the year, like that game December 22nd in Seattle, that may be the game we see JJ McCarthy, and he finally plays because Minnesota's season's gone. So it'll be interesting to see.
It was pretty cool. They had an over-under on how many rookie QBs will start day one, and I think the number right now is 3.5. So it's like you need 4 to start. And to me, it's like Jaden Daniels is going to start day one. Caleb Williams is going to start day one. Obviously, Penix is going to be on the bench. We know that. And then it comes down to I think Bo Nix will start day one. So there you got 3, and then you need to be the 4th guy. It's going to be either McCarthy or who am I missing here, Bryce? Drake May, right? And to me, it's like, do you think Drake May is going to beat out Jacoby Brissett? For the Patriots' sake, I certainly hope he does, because if he doesn't, that is a scary thing.
Yeah, and I think, but the other thing is too, it's like you said, like you brought up JJ, like, you look at Green Bay, for example, and how good Jordan Love played last year, and how these guys are, sometimes there's a lost art where you sit and learn the system and just everything about the NFL, not getting thrown to the wolves. Like sometimes, sure, you get a CJ Stroud and it works out. He's off to the races, but that doesn't happen all the time. Look at the guy that went first overall last year. Man, that guy could use some time on the bench, especially, I mean, the Carolina Panthers just aren't good, so it's like you're setting this guy up for failure right out of the gate, and say, opposed to what Green Bay did. Guy sits behind, obviously a Hall of Famer, develops, and then look what they did. Almost, should actually beat the Niners. But young team and lack of experience, all that kind of stuff. And like Bryce said, they're going to be a tough team next season. So it, like you said, over under that, and that's the thing. So if you're a team like Minnesota, why would you want to rush this kid? Drake May's another guy, but so we'll see. But yeah, man, moving on. So I think we're at your number 6 guy. You got May there, or
not yet, unfortunately, for Patriots fans. I have Michael Pratt as my QB6 in this draft. And this is the mentally and physically toughest QB in this class. He got the absolute snot beaten out of him for 3 years for a Tulane team that was basically overmatched almost any time they stepped on the field. His leadership is unbelievable. He has the it factor. I just love his personality. He's never scared. He's got good size, 6'3", 220. And I'll just make this very quick because I know we got to speed this up here. But if you want to learn who Michael Pratt is, turn on the Oklahoma game in 2021. That is all you need to see. I watched that and I was sold. I love his leadership. He gets literally absolutely clobbered in the first half by the Oklahoma D lineman. He takes one of the nastiest headshots I've ever seen in my entire life. 99% of quarterbacks would have tapped out. I'm convinced he was concussed. He comes back in and almost wills them to victory while still getting hit. I'm not joking, Bryce. He's literally getting hit every time he drops back to pass. There's not one play in that game where he has a true clean pocket. They're down 37-14 at one point. A lot of QBs would have just tapped out. He comes back in off the concussion. I'm convinced. I'm just speculating. Keeps battling, and they almost win that game. And at the time, Bryce, Oklahoma was the number 2 team in the country with Spencer Rattler at quarterback, which was just amazing to me. I'll just very short here. If you want to find out who Michael Pratt is, turn on that 2021 Oklahoma game. I was blown away. Great deep ball thrower as well. And he is just, I just wrote down, it's a certified dog. He is a dog at quarterback. He's one of the guys, man. In terms of negatives, just fumbles. He doesn't consistently throw spirals, and he is a little reckless in his running style. He runs straight up the middle, man. He's a dog. That's who he is. Pro comparison, Jared Goff with wheels. Realistic, Brock Purdy with a better arm. And then low end to me is like Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah.
No, that's actually I have no arguments with that one or no real change. That's kind of how I look at him the same way.
Want to finish this off? QB7?
Yeah, let's go QB7. QB7.
All right. It's just a tier called big time mechanical issues with some upside, and that is Drake May. 6'3" and some change. He had by far the worst supporting cast of all the top quarterbacks. I hate the North Carolina offense. It's just not very QB friendly. Not a fan of the concepts they run. His receivers flat out suck. There's just no other way to put it. His O-line leaves a lot to be desired. So you have to factor all that in when you're evaluating Drake May. They lost some talent to the NFL last year. He just didn't have a lot of help around him. His highlight reel of best plays is really impressive. That's probably why you had guys who were pretty unqualified to make these kind of statements about him being the second best quarterback in the class. Why they fell in love with him is because they didn't actually watch his full game tape. They just turned on a highlight reel and fell in love with him, which is understandable. If I turned on his highlight reel, I'd love Drake May too. But the difference is, me and Bryce watch full games, right? And we see the good and the bad. He is pretty mobile. He makes some really great throws down the middle on a rope. Plays big in the pocket. He is tough. He gets the crap beat out of him some games and keeps coming back for more. To me, let's talk about the negatives here because this is a long list. So here we go. Number one, his size is being a little overvalued. He's not a full 6'4". He's 6'3" with some change. He has enormous mechanical issues. There's a hitch in his motion when he throws. It's by far the slowest throwing motion out of all the top QBs. He's not as fast as I expected. I was told that he's a really mobile QB. He's not going to be able to run in the NFL. He drifts out of the pocket for no reason sometimes. He's got really bad feet. There's no quickness to his pocket movement. He gets himself sacked a lot just by drifting into pressure. I don't love his overall feel in the pocket. I think he's just kind of going with the flow sometimes. His base is way too narrow for me. He needs a wider base. There's no way he can generate rotational torque. Flinches when facing pressure. He gets rattled at times. He doesn't throw spirals consistently. To say his accuracy comes and goes would be putting it lightly. When he misses badly. Like there's a throw at his pro day when he's throwing on air and he's throwing a 10-yard outcut and the ball literally hits the wall of the gym. Like it wasn't even close. He legitimately, his misses look like a high school quarterback out there. Multiple passes out of the back of the end zone, 5 yards out of bounds. He missed at least 5 wide open touchdowns that I counted, or just plain accuracy issues. When he's not faced with big time pressure, he still struggles with his accuracy. His deep ball accuracy is inconsistent. Decision making is flat out bizarre at times. They run sprint right option, Bryce. I know you know that one. Down near the goal line, they run sprint right option against Clemson. He's got the flat route wide open, and he just forces it into double coverage on a hitch route. Makes no sense to me. Easy knockdown by the DB. It's hard to put into words how much I hate his throwing motion. No discipline and structure to his game. Needs to sit for at least 1 year, preferably 2, to clean up his mechanics and decision-making. Pro comparison, high-end Sam Darnold if he didn't get drafted by the New York Jets. Realistic, Mitch Trubisky, and low-end is Blake Bortles. And that wraps up my QB rankings for 2024.
So it's funny you talk about Drake May because I was listening to, I think it was Michael Lombardi was talking about, Sam Howell and this was a Seahawk kind of related thing. And they were saying, what did he feel about Sam Howell and who he's talked to? Michael Lombardi's been a GM in the NFL. He's quite connected. I like listening to his stuff. And he said that after talking to some coaches and scouts that had talked to coaches at North Carolina, they feel that Sam Howell was a better prospect than Drake May.
I would agree.
And Sam Howell could run the offense that Drake May ran this year and run it better. And the thing that I think for Drake May is I think the Patriots drafted Mac Jones again, just 7 picks higher than they took Mac Jones a few years ago. Like,
just a little more mobility. That's it.
But I don't know if you got that much mobility realistically with Drake May. He doesn't run effectively. So, like, it would have made more sense, in my opinion, if the Patriots had gone and drafted Michael Penix.
For sure.
Like, he's an upgrade off of Mac Jones. You literally went and got the same dude again.
Yeah.
He's a little bit slender. He looks more athletic, but he's the same guy that you just shipped off to Jacksonville. Like,
who's he going to throw the ball to, Bryce? Like, there's like the cabinet is bare, man. Their O-line sucks. They have no receivers.
Exactly. So it's what I find funny though too is the Patriots. It seems like took a playbook out of the 2013 Washington at the time Redskins draft philosophy. That year in 2012, not 2022, 2012, they drafted RG3. They then turned around and drafted Kirk Cousins later on.
Right.
The Patriots turned around and drafted Drake May, and then they turned around later on in the draft and took a flyer on Joe Milton. Apparently in OTAs, Joe Milton has already looked better than Drake May. And as much as so many people were like, oh, Joe Milton's this, Joe Milton's not that good, I will still stay here and look at Joe Milton is very similar to Anthony Richardson. And people seem to be missing that. Like, their numbers are statistically the same in a lot of categories. I think Joe Milton might be better than Drake May. Now, that's a far-fetched statement, but I think it could be potentially possible.
Can I just say one thing here, Bryce? And I think that selection of Joe Milton has caused so many problems already. Because, Bryce, from a purely quarterback perspective, what is the most uncomfortable thing for a quarterback now?
Oh, looking over your shoulder.
And not just looking over your shoulder, but looking over your shoulder at a guy who has a way better arm than you do. For me, man, like, most of the times when I stepped on the field, I had the one, if not the best, one of the best arms on the team. Dude, when you step on the field, there was a time I remember, like, I was just on the field and there was this Manitoba Bison's quarterback, and his name was Julian Wittick. And he had one of the biggest arms I've ever seen in my entire life. And just standing next to him and throwing, I was legitimately uncomfortable because I didn't even feel like I deserved to be on that field with him. His arm was so insane. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. So to me, what you've done now is you have Drake May, a guy with mechanical issues who's still kind of learning how to figure out how to throw the ball properly. And then you have Joe Milton with the biggest arm in the universe standing next to him. There's going to be days at training camp, Bryce, you know this, man. Like, the guys in the locker room are going to come off the field and go, wow, did you see the way Joe was throwing it today? Holy smokes, man. Joe Milton can really throw it. And that's horrible for a starting quarterback. You're trying to set up Drake May for success. I think they've done everything they can to set that kid up to fail. I feel bad for Drake May.
Well, no, it'll be very interesting to see what happens there with New England and their whole drafting of the two quarterbacks. So,
yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say about that too. I mean, like you said, we're talking about guys that start. I mean, it's hard not to start him because he's a top 3 pick. But I mean, like you said, there's so many holes in that team that there's no reason to start him. Like, what are you going to do? He's going to come in. He's going to lose majority of the games, and then, like Bryce was mentioned, they're just going to be like, this is Mac Jones all over again, right? Opposed to saying, okay, you start a veteran and you got Milton there. He's your third, and let Drake develop and clean up the mechanical issues. And then maybe in year 3, when you build the team up, if management goes in the right direction and drafts properly in the next couple of years, then you say, okay, we have a foundation and this guy's ready to go. But yeah, I mean, I agree. If you just throw him into the Wolves with no weapons, no anything, then what do you expect, right? He's just going to fail. So that's where like sitting a guy properly, like Anthony Richardson was an example. He brings up Richardson. That's why I thought it'd be great if we draft him, because it would have been a great situation for everybody. Sits behind Geno for a couple of years. He learns the game. He had limited starts, but all the talent and ceiling in the world, opposed to going to say Indy. He's your day one starter. Doesn't really know, like gets injured all the time, gets creamed, and then he's out for the year. We'll see what happens, right? So it's gonna be interesting with May.
As
Let's
you guys have talked about, the Seahawks were one pick away from getting
one, yeah, totally. And in talking to different people, there was some guys that were a couple people connected. They were like, they were gonna take him, right? So, but anyways, that is what it is. We drafted fifth, and hey, we got a stud corner. But let's take a quick little break here, and then on the other side, we're gonna jump into some current top guys in the league and top quarterbacks right after this. All right, welcome back to the show, man. Noah, that was awesome, man. Breaking down your 7 and yeah, you know what? Like, because when we mentioned Milton right at the end there, Bryce and I were actually really high on Milton, and so it's just interesting that now both those guys are on the roster, and yeah, I'm rooting for Milton actually. So we'll see how that plays out. But now on this side of the break here, we're gonna jump into top 15 quarterbacks in the league and break that down and talk about that. Bryce, you're gonna kick it off, man. Let's go.
Okay.
You want to go backwards? You going 15 down, or how you want to do it?
I'm going to go top down.
Let's go top down. So okay, let's go.
I'll make it. I won't, go and rattle anyone's cages, but my number one this year, going into this year, and his tier on his own is Patrick Mahomes. As much as I hate to say it, Patrick Mahomes is a tier in his own after what he did last year with that limited receiving core.
Yeah.
I still think, and I will still harbor this point, that I want to see him do it without Andy Reid. I think Andy Reid makes up for some of the things that Patrick Mahomes, especially that deficiency of a receiving core and his scheme ability, really helped Mahomes out last year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when Reid finally retires. In tier 2, so I call this tier 1's just Mahomes. Tier 2 is the elite. I've got 3 guys sitting in that class. Number 2, and I think him coming off an injury, he's going to be the only one that can dethrone Patrick, is Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I think they've done it before. I think Joe's going to come back. I think he's going to be healthy this year. They've gone out and built an offensive line. I think Joe Burrow is going to come back with a vengeance. You've already seen him look like Anakin Skywalker with his new long hair that he's got going on, which I just love. So I got Joe at 2. I got Lamar at 3 because I think with Derrick Henry there is going to be a bit more of a force just with his running ability and teams potentially actually like having to scheme for something other than Lamar and his legs. And number 4, I got Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen is on that cusp of either he's going to take another step and refine his game with becoming more of a precision passer, or he's going to start petering off and fall out of this elite category to good but not great. It'll be interesting to see what happens with his receiving core. Tier 3, so postseason caliber QBs. I've got Justin Herbert here at 5. I think him with Jim Harbaugh is going to be very interesting. I think Jim Harbaugh might actually unlock some of Herbert's things that may have not been able to be unlocked with his previous coaching staff. Number 6, I have Matthew Stafford. I think Matthew Stafford came back into being a top quarterback last year. I think he's going to continue that if he stays healthy. Number 8, I have Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love proved to everybody last year over that back half of the season that he is a playoff caliber quarterback. He almost knocked off the 49ers, which would have been just a huge shock. Like, he played almost flawless in that game until like the last pass of the game. What is that? I'm at 7. So number 8. Yeah, number 8 I've got Aaron Rodgers. I think Rodgers comes back. If he's healthy, he's a postseason caliber quarterback. Number 9, I've got Jalen Hurts. I think Hurts is on that cusp of postseason caliber. He's gone to a Super Bowl. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with him and Kellen Moore now, because Kellen Moore's passing system is a little bit different than what he's had to deal with Nick Sarian down there. And then number 10 is Noah's boy, CJ Stroud. He is a top 10 quarterback in this league. He proved it last year, taking that god-awful Texans team somehow to the playoffs and winning a playoff game. So I've got CJ Stroud there at 10. And that's my postseason caliber, like can get you to a Super Bowl on their abilities. Number 4 tier is like the melting pot of starters. So guys that can win you games. And this is where I get my last little 5 quarterbacks in. So number 11, I have Geno Smith. I think Geno is number 11. I think if you get a full good season of Geno, he can win you some playoff games, but he's going to need things around him. He can't do it on his own. Number 12 in that, I have Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy's in the same category as Geno. He's a great guy that when the pieces are around him, he can make stuff happen. Number 13 is Tua. Again, a guy that needs things around him. Take Tua out and put him in Pittsburgh. Tua's not doing the same things he's doing in Miami with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. And then number 15 for me is Jared Goff. I think Jared Goff has finally kind of like put the fact that, he was only good because of McVay. You look at his draft counterpart that year, and Carson Wentz is now a backup quarterback in the league. Jared Goff has really done a lot of great things with his own game with Ben Johnson there in Detroit. And so for me, that's my top 15 quarterbacks.
Yeah, man, it's a good list right there, man. I can't argue with your obviously number 1, man. We don't even have to mention that. And then Burrow, yeah, Josh Allen's gonna be an interesting one. Just because no weapons, that's gonna be interesting to see what happens. Chase Claypool, I mean, I don't even want to get into that, but so that's gonna be that is gonna be really interesting. Question for you, real quick, before we jump into Noah's, man. Where you got Russ right now?
Russ for me on my list. Where did I put Russell?
Like, I'm just thinking, like, I think the Pittsburgh thing is going to be an interesting situation because you talk about, always a good defense in Pittsburgh, a run game, and kind of like reminiscent of Russ's early years, just set up for him. So I'm interested to see if he's in Noah's 15, but
he is not. So for me, I have tier 5, which I call can single-handedly win and lose you games.
Yeah, okay.
Russell is at the bottom of that. I have Baker in that category, Derek Carr, Deshaun, and Russell sitting in there. And that's kind of my grouping in there. Like, Russ didn't play bad last year, but Russ isn't Russ that we knew playing in Seattle.
No.
And that is a prime example of Russ losing his legs.
Matt, I wanted to ask you a question. I know Bryce's take on this. I've asked him this before. He has no sympathy for Russ. But for me, man, I gotta be honest with you, like that year with Hackett as the head coach.
Sure.
I honestly felt bad for Russ, dude. Like I've never seen a guy fall off that hard from grace. Do you feel like a sense of empathy or sympathy for Russ? Is it just hard? Is it sad to see what he's become? Or do you go, you chose to leave Seattle, man, you're lost?
Well, Bryce and I talked about, you sort of saw the decline like the last couple seasons. It wasn't like a huge shock. Now, it was shocking how bad he played, but like it wasn't like, oh, what happened to this guy? Like a lot of the same things you saw in Seattle were happening that he was doing that year in Denver. Like all of a sudden it's 3rd and 25, or Russ is taking, sacks at, because the O-line has no idea where he is, and just some of the same stuff, the 3 and outs. It was just the same thing. So that wasn't a surprise. Denver finishing as bad as they did was a little shocking. So I had no sympathy. And the other reason why I was rooting for them to lose every game, because we got their draft pick. And then he was just doing stupid stuff like throughout the year. Like, honestly, man, you coming in and, let's ride. Like that was the first thing. He's thinking about slogans more than, his game. And then, the doing the high knees on the plane, and guys like, who's this dude? Last year,
Cormac, you can't forget the Danger Witch.
Which Subway actually pulled off the shelf.
Yeah.
Right? So,
can I just say one thing here? So it was only available in Subway in the United States, but I was so
Right.
curious to try it that I looked up exactly what's on it, and I
Uh-huh.
went to Subway here on Van Island and ordered the exact thing he ordered. I'm like, wow, like this
Yeah.
is what you consider spicy, Russ? Like it's not
Right.
even that
Well, I will say I haven't been into a Subway in 20 years, so like I don't even know what
probably
to
good to say.
compare it to. But I will say last year though, I did feel a little sympathy for him because I just thought Sean Payton treated him like a total asshole. Like I was
Yeah.
like, come
Yeah.
on, man. Like, and the fact that, and you can say what you want about did he get paid too much or whatever. Denver gave him that contract. Now they're coming back say, hey, let's take some of this back and all this kind of, or you're benched. So it was just kind of really an unprofessional way to go about it. So I thought, and he, like you said, like Bryce said, he did play pretty decent last year. So I think it's going to be a nice little fresh start for him in Pittsburgh. And I'm not even a Steelers guy, but I'm actually hoping he actually plays okay, and I think he actually might. So, yeah, that'll be interesting. But
I agree with you. I think Sean Payton came off as very petty in that whole situation.
yeah, yeah, and it's great. It's one thing to say, "Hey, well, he wasn't my guy," but there's another way to go about it. You know what I mean? Like it was just so public that I don't like this guy, right off the hop. Whether you agree with like team 3 being in the building, it's like right away, the first day he gets in here, we're changing all this about, our QB that, the Denver ownership paid a lot of money to and invested a lot of capital. So interesting, man. And say what you want about Sean if you like him, I just thought the whole situation was just a little weird. But yeah, man, so let's jump over to your 15. Maybe Russ makes it, maybe he doesn't. But yeah, I mean, if you want to do the same, if you want to go 1 to 15, and who you got a number 1.
Yeah, absolutely. No surprise here. Patrick Mahomes, to do what he did last year with that horrible receiving core is pretty spectacular. Number 2, I have Josh Allen. I just think the physical tools are maybe the greatest we've ever seen in terms of his mobility and his arm and his size and running ability. I think Josh Allen is unbelievable. And as a Dolphins fan, I can tell you that, man, I've lost a lot of sleep because of that guy. So maybe I'm biased there, but he haunts me in my nightmares. Josh Allen is number 2 for me. I have Lamar at 3. I think it's hard to not put him at 3 after the season he had last year. Kind of the biggest thing I thought he improved on was just truly showing that he can stay in the pocket and beat teams with his arm rather than taking off and running all the time. I thought he was a great pocket passer last year, and I was happy to see him take strides in that department. Number 4, I have C.J. Stroud. I think what he did with that horrible Texans roster is one of the greatest quarterbacking jobs in the history of the NFL. That team had absolutely no business being in the playoffs, let alone. I think that team on paper should have won probably 6 games, and to make the playoffs, I think it was incredible. He's so poised, you can't fluster him. Most accurate QB I've ever seen in my entire life, and just how good he played in the pocket, man. You just don't see that from a rookie quarterback. So I have Stroud at 4. I have Joe Burrow at 5. And that's kind of a projection because he wasn't even on the field last year. It seems like every other year for that guy, he has a season-ending injury. So we'll see if he can stay healthy this year. I have Stafford at 6. I think it's the same as Bryce had it. That Rams team had no business being in the playoffs last year, and somehow he just, put them on his back and dragged them to the playoffs. I thought he outplayed Jared Goff in that playoff game, but the Lions just had the better team, and they ended up winning that one. I have Herbert at 7. The physical traits, it's hard to not put him at 7. He's a freak of nature, 6'6", 4.0 GPA, runs a 4.6 or whatever it was, and has that bazooka for an arm. It's a little bit of a projection as well. He didn't have a great year last year, but I think being with Harbaugh, it's a match made in heaven. And I think really the only thing missing from Herbert's game is the leadership. And just kind of being more like outspoken and vocal. And I think Jim Harbaugh will bring that out of him really quickly. You're not going to be an introverted, quiet guy if Jim Harbaugh is your head coach. You're going to be out of there pretty quick. I think I have Jared Goff at number 8 personally. I think the job that he did with the Lions last year, literally, I think 2 things. I want to just give Jared Goff a shout out here because I think what he's done in Detroit is truly one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. I didn't think that team would ever win a playoff game in my lifetime, and to win 2 and really should have beaten the 49ers is incredible to me. And what you've seen now from Jared Goff is he was drafted number 1 to a really shitty Rams team and took them from the bottom of the league to a Super Bowl. And now he's gone to the Lions and, changed the culture again. So that's why I love Jared Goff is that he's been on bad teams and he's gone through hell and it's been bad at the beginning, and he has hung in there, man. He has got to be mentally tough because the job he's done reviving 2 franchises is pretty cool to me. I have Baker at number 9. I just love the guy. No Armac, we're the same way that way, man. You called your shot last year, and I've always loved Baker, man, but even I didn't see what was going to come this year with Tampa Bay. I think his personality is something that's not talked about enough, man. Just the will to win, man, and the alpha leadership style. I think teammates gravitate towards that. Now, when you're losing, that big personality kind of comes back to haunt him a little bit with the Cleveland media and the commercials and everything. But when you're winning, man, and especially on a new team like Tampa Bay, I think he grabbed that locker room really quickly, man, and they followed him and they believed in him. And I think it worked really well for them. I have Dak at 10. I have my questions about him. I won't even get into that. Cousins at 11. I have Purdy at 12. Hurts at 13. 2 at 14. And I have Geno at 15. And then I left 2 guys off the list just because I couldn't find a place to put them. So Jordan Love, to me, like if I'm just projecting this year of like who is going to be a top 6 or 7 QB, Jordan Love was outstanding last year, and I love him going forward. I think Jordan Love is going to be an amazing quarterback in this league, but I've really only seen it for half a year. Like the first half of last year, it was ugly at times. The second half was elite quarterback play, and the playoff game against Dallas was amazing. But I just haven't seen enough body of work to really put him on this list yet. But in terms of if you were just asking me to evaluate the second half of the season last year, he's a top 10 quarterback easily, no questions about it. And then in terms of Rodgers, it's just no one knows how he's going to recover from the injury. But if he does return to form, he's absolutely a top 10 quarterback in this league.
Yeah, man, that's little different than what Bryce had there. The obviously he doesn't have Baker on there. You don't have Love. He has Love. Bryce, you don't got Dak on your top 15, did you? No, okay. To Dak, see Dak for me. Here's like if I didn't come up with a 15. But I will say I don't know if Dak's in my 15 just because like you talk about body of work, right, with Love, and you talk about sample size, and you just haven't seen enough. Now, if he has another year like he did in the second half of the playoffs, he's probably in your top 15. But you look at Dak and you've seen the body of work, especially when it's playoff time. And it's just to me, like, you're like, you talk about like, if you're a Cowboy fan, are you excited about, giving this guy a long-term deal because you kind of know what you got and what you're going to do. And to me, like, you're not going to go far with this guy in the playoffs. So that to me, like, that's part of it. When I look at a guy, like you mentioned, Baker, that's also, like you said, intangibles of, just that will to win and all this kind of stuff. I don't know, man. Like Dak is it's a tough one for me.
I agree, man. He's shown time and time again that he can't win you a Super Bowl. He's just not that type of quarterback. They've surrounded him with some great teams. I think his best shot was probably that rookie year. I think it was 2016 when he had Zeke in the backfield and that amazing Cowboys offensive line. But I just think, man, honestly, like they didn't have much outside of CeeDee Lamb last year, and he was pretty damn good statistically for the most part. But obviously that playoff game was honestly one of the biggest epic failures for the Cowboys I've ever seen. And that's saying something because there's been a lot of playoff failures for the Cowboys.
Dak Prescott, to me, when I look at him, he is a poor man's Tony Romo.
Wow.
That's how I look at Dak.
Tony Romo with less improvisation skills.
Right.
Dak has never put a string of wins together in the playoffs. Tony Romo never really put a string of wins together in the playoffs. And when I look at the last 15, 20 years of the Dallas Cowboys, I know this is a Seahawks podcast, so we won't talk this long. Their best chance to go to a Super Bowl was 2014 when we played Green Bay in the NFC Championship game. They should have been the team we played. They also beat us that year at home with DeMarco Murray running down our throat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if that Dallas team had come into Seattle in that NFC Championship game, we wouldn't have made the Super Bowl back-to-back years because I think that Dallas team would have run us over and we wouldn't have survived Russell's 4-interception performance. But because Green Bay was so beat up and Aaron Rodgers was so beat up that year with his injuries, we were able to still somehow get ourselves and will ourselves to that Super Bowl in 2014. So that's why, for me, Dak's Dak, I've never looked at Dak and been like, yeah, Dak's the guy.
Yeah.
And if we're being completely honest here, Bryce, they should have played you in that NFC Championship
Yep.
game. It was a catch. We all know it was. But,
Yep.
Yeah. So you real quick, I gotta ask you where you and I can't get off it because I like the guy now. Well, I've always liked him. Where you got Russ as far as in that Pittsburgh? Like, don't you think it's a good fit?
Yeah, first of all, I think the people who are saying like Justin Fields is going to take his job, like,
Yeah, no.
he must be on some strong stuff, man. Because Justin Fields is not like he's not even in the same stratosphere as Russ, man. And
No, he's not.
that's saying a lot too. Like, I think people like here's a serious thing. I don't know if you guys have seen it. Like, if you put Russ's stats up from last year next to Patrick Mahomes, it's pretty close.
Russ had a good year.
Russ played well, man, and Sean Payton does deserve credit for like turning that around because he was pretty broken mentally after the Nathaniel Hackett disaster. I think he'd probably be pretty close, coming up there from somewhere in that 15 to 20 range, I would say. He played well last year, man. It's just sad that Sean Payton had basically made up his mind mentally, personality-wise. Me and this guy just can't coexist.
I just think it's a good situation for him and going to Pittsburgh with Tomlin and just, that team. Pittsburgh always just has a good team. It's not like so you look at that and just a solid organization. And that's where I look at organizations and I rank it where it's like this is a solid organization and just don't screw it up kind of thing. So I think, Pittsburgh was competitive last year with damn, they came into our house with was it Mason Rudolph?
Yep.
And killed us. They ran the ball a ton, but and that's the thing. You got a run game, you got this, you got that, so Russ has a foundation where if he just comes in and says, you know what, I can be solid. I had a good year last year. I can see them, even being even better than last year and a playoff team. And so I'm kind of excited for that. But man, yeah, great list. It's funny you both got Stafford. Man, talk about I actually thought there was a chance that he was going to retire the previous year. Like when he was hurt majority of the year, Baker comes off the plane and I actually thought that, hey, this could be Sean McVay's guy. I actually thought that, he might stick around in LA there. And obviously, I don't understand the inner workings inside the team. And obviously that, they knew Stafford was going to be cleared and he wants to come back. But yeah, what a year he had and kind of, really said, hey, I'm back, so that's not great news for, Seahawks fans, obviously, but as far as, the Rams being good again. So,
I'm happy for too, man. Like we all love a comeback story, right? Like,
oh yeah, no, for sure.
Before Seahawks fans fell out of love with Geno Smith, that was a pretty awesome story that first year when he came back and took you to the playoffs after everything he went through with the Jets and in the middle of his career. And to see Baker do it, man, I'm happy for that guy. He deserves it.
Oh, Baker, yeah, and as far as Geno, I don't think people fall out of love. Like we both actually really like Geno. You kind of want to see, what is kind of next, I guess. Like what's the next move for Seattle? What's the long-term plan? Or are they just going? So, and because you kind of know what Geno is, and I think that's sort of what is kind of been established now the last couple seasons. Like when he came in, when Russ broke the hand, it was like, I think he started at the 1 yard line and drove all the way down. You're like, okay, it looks pretty good. He's been sitting on the bench. So then when, he was the starter, yeah, they go 9-8. Like you said, they were supposed to win 4 games. So, it's just a matter of like, now you've seen him for a couple of years. And it's like, okay, what are we doing this year? Is it going to be another 9-8? That kind of thing. So we still got love for Geno. I think it's more, where's the projection at the quarterback position?
Yeah, I think that first season was kind of like the honeymoon phase of like, oh man, we were supposed to win 4 games. Here comes Geno Smith, comeback story. He took us to the playoffs. It was just a honeymoon phase of like, wow, this is awesome. This is super cool. We didn't expect this. And then you come back next year and it's kind of like the Geno you remember, a little closer to that, right? And now it's more just like, well, if the goal is to win a Super Bowl, like, can we win that with Geno? You know what I mean? Like, we know he can get us to the playoffs if you give him put a team around him. But can he win you a Super Bowl? To be determined. I honestly would love to see it. but we'll find out soon.
Yeah, man. So good stuff, Noah. We appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on, man. Why don't you really quickly let people know what are you doing right now? You're coaching a lot. So what do you got going on? And yeah, how can people get a hold of you if they want to especially as a quarterback, young QB, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so right now just coaching with the VI Raiders. We have our training camp coming up here on Friday of this week. So that's why we had to push the podcast a little sooner, but we are really excited, man. It's a new coaching staff. This is my first year with the team. The year prior, we literally went 0-10, didn't win a single game. So they, kind of made some changes to the coaching staff, and we really feel good about it, man. We think we have the right guys in the building. The right coaching staff, me and the offensive coordinator, man, we get along great. He's an awesome guy. Fully believe in his vision and our head coach, Sean's vision. And just really excited here, man. We got some good recruits coming up. Guy who actually was the leading passer in the history of Wyoming high school state football. He's going to be in the running to be a starting quarterback. We'll figure that out at camp here in a few days. And we're just super fired up, man. 0-10 last year. I think we're going to shock a lot of people in the league, man. It's going to be pretty surprising for some people. I think I heard from a friend that the biggest, I could be wrong with this, don't quote me, but the biggest 1 year turnaround in this conference is maybe a 3 or 4 game difference. We want to break that for sure. If we go from 0-10 to even 5 or 6 wins, man, sign me up, because I think I'm getting a lifetime contract extension.
Awesome stuff, man. Appreciate it, man. So awesome quarterback breakdowns and just having you on, man. And yeah, we'll definitely touch base in the future, maybe close to the season. And yeah, appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Noah.